The Roman Empire is often remembered for its grandeur, military might, and cultural achievements. But amidst the tales of emperors and gladiators lies a lesser-known story of a community that existed on the fringes of Roman society: the queer community. The lives of individuals in ancient Rome were vastly different from those of their heterosexual counterparts, and often involved secrecy, persecution, and even death. In this article, we will delve into the chilling queer life in the Roman Empire and explore the challenges faced by this community in a society that was not accepting of their existence. Join me on a journey back in time to uncover a hidden history that has been overshadowed for far too long. The Roman Empire was a complex society with rigid social norms and expectations, and being part of the queer community was considered taboo. Homosexuality, for instance, was viewed as a deviation from the norm and was often associated with moral degeneracy. This societal stigma meant that individuals were forced to keep their identities secret and were often subjected to discrimination, ridicule, and even violence. Despite the challenges they faced, members of the queer community in ancient Rome still found ways to form relationships, express themselves, and carve out spaces for themselves in society. Same-sex relationships, for example, were not uncommon among the Roman elite, with many emperors and powerful figures known to have had relationships with people of the same gender. Understanding queer life in the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire is often associated with images of powerful emperors, gladiators, and epic battles. However, the empire was also home to a vibrant and complex queer community that thrived despite societal and legal barriers. Understanding queer life in the Roman Empire is crucial to gaining a full understanding of the social and cultural history of the era. It's important to note that the concept of queer identities and sexual orientations did not exist in the same way it does today. Same-sex relationships and desires were present and visible in Roman society, but they were not categorized or understood in the way we do now. Additionally, the term queer itself did not exist at the time. Roman attitudes towards same-sex relationships were complex and often contradictory. While some individuals and groups openly embraced and celebrated same-sex relationships, others viewed them with suspicion or disdain. The dominant Roman cultural perspective was that same-sex relationships were only acceptable in specific contexts, such as between a man and a young boy, or in the context of male-male power dynamics. The dichotomy of Roman attitudes towards same-sex relationships. The attitudes of the ancient Romans towards same-sex relationships were complex and varied. On the one hand, homosexuality was not uncommon in ancient Rome, and many people engaged in same-sex relationships. On the other hand, Roman society was deeply patriarchal and heterosexual, and there were strong taboos against homosexuality. One factor that complicated Roman attitudes towards same-sex relationships was the gender norms of the time. While male-male sexual activity was not necessarily considered taboo in ancient Rome, it was generally seen as a violation of masculine gender roles. Roman society placed great importance on male virility and the ability to dominate others, and men who engaged in same-sex relationships were often seen as effeminate or weak. At the same time, Roman culture celebrated physical beauty and athleticism, and same-sex relationships were sometimes seen as a way to appreciate and admire the male form. In fact, same-sex relationships were sometimes depicted in literature and art, with famous examples including the poetry of Catullus and the frescoes of Pompeii. Social and legal status of queer individuals in the Roman Empire. The social and legal status of queer individuals in the Roman Empire is a complex topic that requires careful consideration of historical evidence and cultural norms. While the Roman Empire is often celebrated for its contributions to the Western legal tradition, its treatment of queer individuals was far from progressive by modern standards. The Roman Empire was founded on a patriarchal society that celebrated masculine virtues and heterosexual relationships. Same-sex relationships, especially between men, were generally frowned upon and were often viewed as a threat to the social order. However, the Roman Empire was not monolithic in its views on queer individuals, and attitudes towards same-sex relationships varied across different regions and time periods. One of the most famous examples of a same-sex relationship in the Roman Empire was that of the Emperor Hadrian and his lover Antinous. Hadrian was widely respected as one of the greatest Roman emperors, and his relationship with Antinous was seen as a sign of his enlightenment and intellectual curiosity. However, while Hadrian's relationship with Antinous was tolerated, it was not celebrated, and other same-sex relationships were often met with suspicion and hostility. Queer cultural practices and communities in ancient Rome. Queer cultural practices and communities in ancient Rome have been the subject of much scholarly research and debate. While modern concepts of sexuality and gender identity do not directly translate to ancient Rome, there are a number of historical sources that suggest the existence of queer cultural practices and communities in the ancient Roman world. One of the most well-known examples is the practice of pederasty, which was a common social institution in ancient Greece and Rome. Pederasty involved an older man, known as the Erastes, forming a sexual and intellectual relationship with a younger man, known as the Eromenos. While the practice was not universally accepted, it was a significant part of elite culture in ancient Rome and was often celebrated in literature and art. The legacy of queer life in the Roman Empire. Lessons for today's society. The legacy of queer life in the Roman Empire is a complex and nuanced subject, but it offers important lessons for today's society. Despite the lack of terminology to describe non-heterosexual orientations as we understand them today, same-sex desire was a significant part of Roman culture, particularly among men. One of the most prominent examples of queer life in the Roman Empire is the relationship between the Emperor Hadrian and his lover Antinous. Antinous was a young man from Bithynia who became Hadrian's companion and was deified after his death. The cult of Antinous continued for centuries, and Hadrian himself was known for his progressive attitudes towards sexuality and gender. The queer experience in the Roman Empire was complex, diverse, and often shrouded in secrecy. Despite facing persecution and discrimination, queer individuals found ways to connect with one another, form relationships, and live fulfilling lives. Whether it was through underground societies or artistic expressions, they defied the social norms of their time and paved the way for future generations to celebrate their identities openly. While the history of queer life in the Roman Empire may be chilling, it is also a testament to the resilience and strength of the human spirit. As we continue to strive for equality and acceptance in the modern world, we can draw inspiration from the courage and perseverance of those who came before us. By learning about and celebrating the diverse range of experiences and identities within the queer community, we can work towards creating a more inclusive and compassionate society for all. So that's it for today. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and click the bell button to get all the latest updates.